London, 2026. While the city sleeps, a storm is brewing inside Clarence's house. Unverified reports are already stirring up public opinion about a move that could shake the royal family to its core. We aren't looking at standard royal protocol here. We're looking at the sudden halting of Princess Diana's inheritance. The big question is, why now? Is this a mere technicality, or have they triggered a protective mechanism designed to stop a disaster? Rumors started whispering through the halls of Windsor long before the outside world caught wind of the subtle shakes rattling the crown. Behind the flawlessly scripted spectacles and the phony veil of unity, a silent storm is brewing, and Anne can't just sit back and watch. This isn't just about protocol or dusty traditions anymore. It's got a deeply personal stamp on it. For months, Anne's been quietly clocking Camilla's every move, realizing her influence stretches way beyond what the late Queen ever had in mind. Reports are piling up that Camilla's been slyly staking her claim to symbols reserved for those who've truly earned their spot, not just inherited it through the usual pecking order. Whispers are spreading like wildfire through the palaces, from hush-hush jewelry fittings to speeches loaded with not-so-subtle digs, right down to special requests hitting the royal archives for historic outfits. To plenty of folks, it's just a touch of harmless modernization. But to Anne, it's starting to feel like a silent coronation, without a shred of buy-in, straight up threatening the bedrock her mom spent 7 decades hammering into place. Behind those velvet drapes, the air's getting thick with tension. Anne's silence grows heavier by the day, her gaze sharpening like a blade in every meeting where Camilla's name comes up. She started dodging those cozy get-togethers, and the insiders are buzzing about late-night huddles in the tucked-away rooms of Buckingham Palace, just Anne, a handful of trusted aides, and a dossier stamped with the late Queen's crest. Whatever goes down in those chambers never hits the books, but her hurried footsteps and that tight edge in her voice, they're screaming of a storm raging inside. For decades, she's been the steel spine of the palace, unbreakable, loyal, and so buttoned up that nothing could rattle her. But now everything's flipped on its head. It's not just Camilla's ballooning influence that's got her on edge, it's this gut-wrenching sense that her mother's dying wishes are fading away, chipped at by time politics and those cutthroat power games. Meanwhile, Catherine's getting shoved into the shadows, despite ticking every single box the crown's ever demanded. Anne sees it all too plainly, and her moves aren't just about shielding her own dignity, they're a fierce stand to safeguard the legacy her mom carved out for the royals tomorrow. Catherine isn't merely the poster child for the future. She's the breathing, beating echo of the enduring values the Queen left behind. But that glow, it's starting to flicker and fade. What really haunts Anne isn't the cutthroat politics, it's the straight-up betrayal of the legacy. For years, she's towed the royal line under her mom's watch, sticking to every dusty protocol and holding the fort for the monarchy through all the wild storms. Now she's seeing those hard-fought sacrifices get traded in for straight opportunism. For the first time ever, Anne's flirting with breaking her ironclad rule of silence. But what shoved her right to the edge? And why's Catherine suddenly the one she's got to shield with that fierce royal fire? It all sparked from one loaded symbolic play, Camilla's scheme, to commission a fresh royal portrait. Wearing the diamond crown that once graced Queen Mary's head, in a family where every gem whispers a piece of history, this choice lit the fuse on a hushed-up feud. Princess Anne's done holding her tongue. What the public got served up as a shiny nod to succession and modern monarchy. It all went down on the palace grounds, and plenty see it as a straight-up calculated power play. Camilla's ask wasn't just about slipping on some bling, it's her way of planting her flag as the true heir to Queen Elizabeth II's throne. And this ain't the crown she rocked at her own coronation. That diamond crown, the iconic one from Queen Mary's era, is tied to the most revered chapters in Windsor history. It's reserved for the women who clawed their way to power through sheer grit and merit, not handed over on a silver platter of proximity or lucky breaks. Camilla knows that all too well. Her team slaved away for months with portrait artists, stylists, and royal curators to pull off this masterstroke. But the plan that was supposed to stay locked down tight, it leaked out of nowhere, unleashing a tidal wave of public backlash that Camilla's camp couldn't rein in. Royal watchers pounced on the timing and the setup in a heartbeat. This wasn't just some photo op, it was a full-blown coronation in disguise. Anne's tightest confidants clocked it right away. The instant she caught wind of that announcement, the ground shifted under her feet. For decades, she danced to the monarchy's unspoken tune of ironclad restraint. But now, that's not restraint holding her back. It's a gut punch of betrayal. That crown hits different for Anne. It once crowned her grandma, then her mom through the crown's stormiest make-or-break years. It's no mere power play, it's the living symbol of moral steel and unbreakable resolve forged and fire-tested across generations. And under Camilla's grip, history's starting to look like it's getting a full-on rewrite. To the public, it might look like a graceful older woman simply paying homage to royal heritage. But Anne sees a stealthy rewrite of the line of succession, one that could eclipse the very values her mother bled to preserve. And she's not the only one getting twitchy. Inside the palace, the whispers are turning into full-blown chatter. Even Charles, who's backed Camilla's role for years, is reportedly nudging the team to rethink that crown choice and pick something less radioactive. Camilla, though, she's digging in her heels. Insiders say Camilla's response was ice-cold, borderline curt. "Let the portrait do the talking," she snapped, but that unspoken flex sent a thunderclap through the corridors. Meanwhile, Catherine, the one quietly holding dignity and composure under skyrocketing pressure and relentless public scrutiny, was conspicuously absent from every discussion about the shoot. She still glides through events with serene poise, but her silence, it screams volumes. Catherine knows exactly what's unfolding, and she knows who's tracking every last detail. Princess Anne, Charles, and their inner circle have been scrambling to play peacemakers. Closed-door meetings, hushed phone calls, and last-ditch pleas to postpone the portrait all happened, but the train had already left the station. Camilla had drawn her line in the sand, and Anne was forced once again to watch the family trade legacy for optics. This time, though, Anne wasn't staying in the shadows, and she sure as hell wasn't going to fight with whispers. Soon she'd make a move that could rattle the monarchy's entire facade. In one rare, unguarded moment, Princess Anne shattered the silence that had bound generations of royals. With a voice that never wavered, she declared she would protect not her sister-in-law, Camilla. But Catherine, the one she believes truly carries the spirit and future of the monarchy. That moment hit like a freaking earthquake. It went down in what was supposed to be a routine internal briefing, just another yawn fest to hash out public events and royal ceremonies. But under the surface, tension had been simmering for ages, and Anne was done swallowing it. Insiders say the second the room fell quiet, Anne shot to her feet, face unreadable, voice sharper than a damn blade. Her words, they've been haunting the palace corridors for weeks. Catherine is the one who carries the Queen's legacy, not Camilla. The weight of that statement hit like a guillotine blade, freezing the room solid for a heartbeat. Even Charles went dead quiet. The air turned thick with shock betrayal and truths no one dared voice. Nobody saw it coming from Anne, the ice-cool, tight-lipped royal who'd never cracked in public. But she'd been pushed way past her limit, and that famously private loyalty, it just went full public testimony. Camilla, who'd strutted in all calm and confident, reportedly turned ghost white on the spot. The attack didn't come from the press, the critics, or the public. It came from inside the palace, from a woman who'd been absolute steel for the monarchy, Anne. For Camilla, this wasn't just a political gut punch. It cut deep personal. She'd banked on Anne's neutrality, maybe even her quiet backing, but the princess's words landed like a kill shot, instant and brutal. Reports say Camilla bolted from the room, brushing off aides, trying to calm her, blindsided by the realization that she might never have truly been accepted by the Queen's eldest daughter. If you were surprised by this story, leave your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to like, share, and sub to support the channel. Charles, swept up in a tangle of raw emotions, found himself backed into a corner with no clean exit. For decades, he'd juggled public duty against private love. Now, with Anne openly challenging his wife's symbolic claim and dragging the Queen's memory into the ring, every path looked blocked. He tried to cool the fire, floating the idea that legacy could be shared, that every woman deserved her own chapter in royal history. But the damage was done. Anne wasn't just speaking for herself. She was channeling a deeper collective unease and the monarchy's own guilty conscience. Catherine, perched near the edge of the room, was visibly shaken, yet still ice calm. Those in the room recall Catherine gently asking Anne not to escalate things further, trying to dial down the heat. But Anne shut it down. She turned to Catherine and said, "You can stay quiet now, but the whole nation will be watching you." That moment marked a seismic shift in royal dynamics. To Anne, Catherine was no longer just the supportive daughter-in-law or the poised Princess of Wales. In the eyes of the public, soon after, she became the living embodiment of the monarchy's future, even without the official title. This wasn't just a family spat. It was a full-blown power realignment at court. Anne just laid it all out. Her loyalty won't bend to titles, marriages, or political games. It'll be guided by legacy, integrity, and the one who truly embodies the soul of the crown. As the dust settles from that blazing showdown, the palace has no clue that Anne's next move will blow past mere words. After years tucked away, a letter from Queen Elizabeth resurfaces, addressed solely to Anne. But this isn't just a private note. It's a quiet royal directive that Anne believes must be honored, even if it means unearthing a secret the crown buried long ago. The letter had been tucked away among the Queen's personal effects, locked in a secure drawer at Balmoral, a spot only Anne was allowed to touch after her mother's death. It was handed over quietly, no fanfare, no pressure. What Anne found inside flipped the script on everything. It kicked off with gentle reflections, a monarch's memories for her only daughter, a soft nod to the weight they'd both carried for decades. But as she read on, the tone sharpened. The Queen, famous for weighing every word, had chosen her language here with razor clarity, direct and undeniable. She spoke of the future of a day when the world would turn its eyes to the women of the crown. Not for their titles, but for their character. Then came the line that stopped Anne cold: "When that day comes, look to the one who carries it with true dignity." To anyone else, it might have sounded poetic. To Anne, crystal clear. Even back then, her mother had been watching, weighing, deciding who among them would truly safeguard the values she'd spent a lifetime defending. And Anne knew exactly who the Queen meant, not Camilla, with her hunger for status. Not someone who entered the House of Windsor through controversy or compromise. But Catherine's steady hands, quiet strength, the woman who never demanded the crown, yet wore it like she was born to it. Anne read the letter over and over, hands trembling, chest tight with a storm of feeling. It wasn't just the words that gutted her. It was the timing. The Queen had penned them during one of the family's darkest wobbles, not long after Harry and Meghan walked away, when the monarchy itself felt like it was teetering on a cliff. In her mother's mind, Anne realized the future wasn't locked in bloodlines or pecking order. It lived in character. And Catherine had become the living proof of that quiet, unshakable steel. For Anne, this wasn't about opinion or personal loyalty anymore. It had become a mandate. The Queen hadn't left a royal decree. But she had left something far more sacred than any decree, a final blessing, a final warning. They say Anne wept alone that night, clutching the letter, the room's silence shattered only by the crushing weight of realization. Her entire life had been defined by duty, loyalty, and service. But now duty had taken on a new form. If she stayed silent, the Queen's voice would fade with her. If she acted, she risked igniting a firestorm within the family. Yet Anne made her choice. Now, armed with the monarch's own words, she was ready to challenge Camilla openly, regally, and without apology. As the portrait scandal spirals further out of control, Camilla's once ironclad inner circle starts to wobble. Whispers of betrayal, emotional meltdowns, and leaked memos expose a queen under siege not by enemies outside the palace walls, but from within her own ranks. What was meant to be a triumphant royal milestone has collapsed into a full-blown legitimacy crisis, shredding Camilla's inner team like an unstoppable storm. The cracks appear quietly at first. The aides who spent years curating her public image are now scrambling as their carefully crafted PR strategy crumbles. Public outrage keeps mounting while support inside the palace quietly evaporates. Behind closed doors, Camilla's rage erupts in rare white-hot outbursts. According to leaks from Clarence House, she ripped into her longest-serving advisors, furious that the royal portrait narrative had slipped completely from her grasp. She demanded answers. How is Anne running the palace like a master strategist? Why does Catherine's understated grace overshadow the image I've spent years building? And most of all, why isn't the sympathy falling to me? Internal memos start leaking, first defensive, then downright desperate. One note allegedly penned by Camilla herself reads, "I am the Queen." Why does she get the sympathy raw and telling it lays bare the core of Camilla's soul? She's realizing a title can't buy affection. The harder she claws for power, the more the public tilts toward Catherine, who says it all without uttering a word. As tensions skyrocket, even her once loyal allies begin peeling away. Some refuse to comment. Others quietly brief journalists describing the Queen's behavior as erratic. The media, already whipped into a frenzy by Anne's defiance, now feasts on leaks straight from Camilla's camp. Her once unbreakable inner circle splinters into factions, diehards, who stay silent defectors, who slip away, and those quietly shifting allegiance to Catherine. Camilla feels her grip slipping. Public events get postponed. Her usual spot beside Charles suddenly goes vacant. Behind locked doors, she stonewalls PR strategists and shoots down every attempt to spin the narrative. Charles, torn between shielding his wife and holding the monarchy together, tries to broker peace. But every word Charles utters in Camilla's defense only deepens the family's silence. Camilla is now isolated, cornered, and worst of all, rejected not just by the public, but by the very institution she fought so hard to be accepted into. Her insistence that she was crowned by the king rings hollow against Catherine's natural dignity and quiet resilience. The queen in title is steadily losing ground to the queen in spirit. Yet through it all, Catherine remains unflinchingly calm. silent, composed, and completely detached from the drama. Her silence becomes her shield. It lets the public see her strength, grace, and wisdom without her ever having to say a word. Anne, watching from the wings, knows that silence is louder than any press release. The monarchy is shifting, and Camilla is no longer the center of attention. But the real jaw-dropper comes when Anne takes her crusade straight to the man who started it all, King Charles. Deep inside Windsor, a showdown nobody saw coming unfolds. Princess Anne stands before her brother not to ask, but to demand, and the ultimatum she delivers leaves the king visibly stunned. This wasn't a public spectacle, nor was it handled through proxies or private notes. Anne summoned Charles directly under the guise of what she called a family matter of national importance. But the moment Charles walked in, he knew this wasn't about protocol or tradition. It was about power principle and their mother's legacy. Anne didn't mince words. Holding the Queen's letter in her hand, she laid out her case with the precision of an officer and the fire of a daughter fiercely loyal to the crown. She hammered home the symbolic weight behind Camilla's portrait, the dangerous rewriting of legacy. And the outrage is now rippling through both the public and the palace. Worse, Anne wields their mother's own voice. She places the letter on the table between them and says flatly, "You know damn well Mum would never allow this. No excuses, just truth." Charles tries to push back, insisting Camilla's position was legally sanctioned by the crown and accepted by the public. But Anne brushes it aside like smoke. No one handed her the soul of this monarchy, she fires back. That moment crystallizes everything. Charles scrambles to reason, framing it as a perception problem rather than reality, stressing that the royal family can't be seen fracturing from within. But Anne was already one step ahead. She reminded the king that the monarchy was already divided, and the only question left was whether he'd lead with courage or keep coasting in comfort. As those words sank in, Charles fell silent. The conversation turned into a cold calculation. Anne pressed on she'd kept the Queen's letter secret until now out of respect. But if Charles refused to act, she'd have no choice but to make its contents public, not to humiliate the crown, but to save it. The message was crystal clear: the era of silent loyalty is over. This is about defending the moral bedrock of the monarchy. If Charles couldn't shoulder that burden, Anne would do it for him. The room fell dead silent, the kind that stretches on forever. Charles, rattled, picked up the letter and read his mother's final words over and over. No shouting, no slammed doors, just the sound of a royal legacy being challenged by the very daughter who'd sworn to protect it at any cost. The confrontation didn't drag on. The very next day, a leaked royal schedule dropped with a bombshell change. Without warning, the palace announced a new ceremonial role previously reserved exclusively for the Queen, and the one stepping up to represent the monarchy, not Camilla, Catherine. The public lost its collective mind. The press went nuclear chattering non-stop. At last, Anne had broadcast her message to the entire world. The announcement dropped at dawn on the official royal website, quiet, but about as subtle as a sledgehammer. Catherine, Princess of Wales, would represent the crown at a global peace summit, an honor previously reserved solely for the reigning monarch or their consort. Camilla's name nowhere to be found. The timing was way too perfect to be coincidence. Just days after Anne's showdown with Charles, and right in the middle of the Camilla portrait firestorm. The message was unmistakable. The future face of the crown would be grace, not dominance, dignity, not deflection. And that face now belonged to Catherine. Inside the royal household, whispers turned to murmurs of approval. Anne hadn't just suggested the change, she'd forced it through. Palace insiders revealed she was in near-constant meetings with senior aides in the days following her clash with Charles. Her influence, once quiet and rarely flexed, had become the driving force behind a movement. And Catherine, though initially hesitant, accepted the role with the calm resolve that defined her. This was not a nominal promotion, but a statement of presence. And that presence resonated around the world when Catherine appeared at the summit, escorted by royal advisors and key dignitaries. Her appearance sent a message that no decree could convey: this is the woman leading the monarchy forward. Camilla, notably absent from all events that week, remained hidden behind the palace doors. The silence surrounding her absence was even more powerful than any denial. Her team tried to control the narrative, but it was too late. Public opinion polls in support of Catherine skyrocketed. Editorials across Europe and the Commonwealth praised a rightful queen rising to prominence. In that pivotal moment, Camilla's name gradually faded, not erased, but overshadowed. The roles had shifted, and the public recognized it. This was not merely a symbolic change, it was a seismic shift in the royal hierarchy. Yet it was not titles or appearances that defined the moment. It was Catherine's words, humble, measured, focused not on power or lineage, but on duty and legacy. She said service is not something inherited, but a way of life. The audience of world leaders and international press rose to their feet. The crowd not only applauded, but also chanted her name. It was a scene the monarchy had not witnessed in decades, since Diana, since Elizabeth. Anne stood quietly behind, not with pride, but with relief. The message had arrived. Her mother's legacy had found a worthy successor. Yet in the shadows of victory, one final shock awaited. Camilla was preparing a counterstrike, an unexpected move that would shake the entire palace. Veiled beneath the layers of royal tradition, but Anne was ready. As the nation watched, the future of the monarchy suddenly became uncertain, teetering on the edge of conflict. After Catherine assumed the representative role, Camilla vanished from the public eye. Days passed, shrouded in silence, no comments, no clarifications, no countermeasures. Yet behind the stone walls of Clarence House, a covert plan was unfolding, one so audacious that even the closest staff were left stunned. Camilla was reportedly ordering preparations for a private, independent coronation tour. Not to celebrate Charles's reign, but as a direct symbolic assertion of her own authority. She would travel alone, donning royal regalia, visiting key Commonwealth sites, a move her aides described as a loyalty awakening. But to the rest of the royal family, it was far more perilous, almost resembling an open coup. Senior courtiers were stunned. The mere proposal of a solo tour without the king, without official approval, was unprecedented. And without the consent of the royal council, it was unthinkable. It bypassed all diplomatic protocol, shook the unity of the institution, and directly challenged the system upon which the monarchy relied to maintain order. For Camilla, this was the final card she had to play. She knew Charles's health was under scrutiny, public support was waning, and power was slipping from her grasp. If she could reach the people, first reclaim empathy and backing the throne could be reinforced. Her team moved swiftly, selecting regions, preparing attire, drafting speeches. Yet they had not accounted for one crucial factor: Anne was far from finished fighting. The moment Anne learned of Camilla's secret plan, she convened an emergency meeting not with Charles, but with the group of senior royal members who had remained silent until now. That silence was about to be broken, and the unprecedented confrontation between the two powerful women in the palace was entering its decisive phase. She carried with her a letter from the Queen and read it aloud in the silent room. No arguments followed, only stunned disbelief. For many, it was the first time they realized that the issue was not merely about image or rivalry. It was a matter of principle. It was the truth. As the late Queen's will became widely known, factions began to form. Two clear groups emerged: those loyal to Anne and Catherine, heirs to the Queen's legacy and ideals, and those who sought personal gain, rallying around Camilla in hopes of inheriting power through loyalty. Catherine, admired by both sides, suddenly found herself caught in the eye of the storm. Her silence, once praised, was now interpreted differently by each faction, by some as wisdom, by others as passivity. Yet Catherine refused to be used. She gave no interviews and issued no public statements. This is purely for reference purposes, only based on hypotheses and unverified rumors/public opinion. Let's discuss it from an objective, analytical perspective. And quietly returning to her family, leaving the brutal battlefield behind, she became a symbol of dignity within the monarchy, tearing apart long-standing ties. The press fed off the chaos, with analysts calling it the Battle of the Crowns. Behind the palace gates, the Queen's legacy trembled in uncertain hands. Who do you think is truly in control of the royal legacy, Catherine or Camilla? If you choose Catherine, leave a 1. If Camilla, comment 0. Enjoy the video and don't forget to leave a sub to support the channel so you won't miss the next thrilling episodes.